This is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. I hope you enjoyed this Critical Thought, your daily discussion on game design. Hello, and welcome to today's Critical Thought. Before we begin, thank you to 793 subscribers here on YouTube. If you've been enjoying the content, be sure to subscribe to the channel as we are ever getting so closer to 800 subscribers and the next Let's Play vote. As always, before we begin, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign you have until the end of October if you would like to support Game Wisdom and everything I do, while getting some cheaper pricings with the early bird discounts. As you notice, there's nothing over here for our example, because today's Critical Thought is going to be on a topic that I'm sure you've all asked at one point or another. What is a video game? That question, along with what is fun, or what makes a game fun, are the two that you can ask any game journalist or game designer to drive them up the wall. The ever-popular question, what is a video game, is something that has been used for debates, discussions, and even different varying amounts of hate mail and toxic comments. The problem, as with everything we've seen with the video game industry, is that there really aren't any real standards for what makes a video game. You can have little, 10-minute games being priced almost as much or close to 20-30 hour games on Steam. And the issues of games evaluation and pricing, that is a very serious topic and one we definitely need to talk more about in another Critical Thought. But when it comes down to trying to figure out what a game is, this topic has been something that has certainly transformed and mutated over the last few years, especially with the rise of the indie market and the types of games that we're seeing, especially those of the more experimental or even philosophical side of things. Back in the old days, you knew games were a good 8 to 10 hour experience. Your princess is in another castle, are you a bad enough dude to save the president, kill Dracula, etc. But in today's market, the amount of time we can spend on video games has certainly varied. We have free-to-play games that can easily deliver 100+ hours of content. Now, whether all that content is engaging and rewarding, that's up for debate. And on the flip side, we have $50, $60 AAA games that may only have an 8 to 10 hour campaign and a multiplayer mode thrown in. But when it comes to defining what a video game is, I'm definitely one of those people who I think we should have some kind of standard, some kind of measurement we can use to base games on, and more importantly, we can start accurately pricing them. Again, pricing, unfortunately, we will have to dedicate to another thought. Now, when we talk about defining a game, the basic rule, I think what we all should hopefully agree on, is that a game is essentially a social contract between the consumer / player and the developer / game maker. The contract essentially is that we agree that we will abide by the rules that you have put forth. There has to be some kind of rules, something essentially unique to this situation. Obviously, when we play a game like Super Mario Brothers, we know within the rules that we're not allowed to pull out a double-barreled shotgun and run around headshotting Goombas. Much like when we play a roguelike, we know that if we die, there's going to be harsh consequences, or at least for the majority of the roguelikes there are. This kind of contract is essentially the rules of the game, and I think that is the first major point for what to define a game as. There has to be rules. There has to be something going on that is unique or set to this one game. Again, if we're playing something where literally anything and everything can happen and there is nothing in control, then we're either playing just a complete sandbox or we're in real life. Now, the sandbox experience, that in of itself is another part of this debate. As you know, we've seen stuff like Gary's Mod, Kerbal Space Program, and even games like Minecraft, where while there are goals in the sense of things for you to go after, it's never really pushed or defined as, big bold letters saying you must do this, this, and this. And that is where this debate gets a little bit more interesting. I want to ask you folks, do you consider sandbox experiences to be games? Again, these are titles where there is no real win or lose state. You just keep playing until you get tired of the game. Now, the next point and the next kind of definition I think for a game, I think this is where we're going to start to get into the argument. In my opinion, I think in order for there to be a game, there must be a win and a lose state. There has to be something to achieve, and there has to be some kind of consequence or something to say that you've lost. We see this in any game ever made. Chess, you win if you checkmate the king, you lose if your king gets checkmated. Tic-tac-toe, 3 in a row, you lose if you don't get it. Football, soccer, tennis, racing, you name it, there are win and lose conditions, or win and loss conditions. And I think right there, I know some of you are about to say, that does cut quite a bit of games, or what we would consider games, to be from that game definition. As we know, there was a huge debate when the quote-unquote walking simulators started to rise in popularity over the last few years. Titles like Dear Esther, Gone Home, even stuff like Amnesia, or the games from Tale of Tales, where there's not really a constant threat. It's something that you just keep experiencing until you're done. There may be an end state, but it's not something that you're being punished or rewarded to get to. For instance, when you play The Path from Tale of Tales, while each one of the characters does have an end screen or an end destination, it's not something that you're basically being tested on or being asked to pursue in a sense. And to talk more about that would probably need a few more minutes. But as we know with games like Dear Esther and Gone Home, there's nothing really at stake or nothing to really achieve in these games. And I think for them, I don't know if I would really call them games. I would certainly call them experiences. But again, if we're trying to define a standard, something that we can judge games on or base their quality on, I do think that a game has to have a win and a loss state. Now, that doesn't mean we should condemn games like Dear Esther, Gone Home, Her Story, etc. It just means they're not really considered games in the same breath as you would something like Dark Souls, League of Legends, Mario, and I could spend 20 minutes listing games easily. Now, from those 2 points, I think that gives us a lot to talk about. So I want to ask you folks, are there any other defining qualities you think that make up a video game? Or even just a game in general? Because any more, and then we start getting into that very sticky situation of locking or restricting certain elements that don't fit what is a game. I remember reading people from like a few years ago trying to come up with like gamer tests. You're not a gamer unless you've spent 10 hours playing World of Warcraft, at least a minimum 3 hours playing Dark Souls, and so on. But I think those two are both defining enough and restrictive enough that we really don't need anything else. Now, that does also raise a question. As you know, a few weeks ago, or I think at this point, probably a few months ago, I made a post regarding Telltale games and how they've really dropped in quality, in my opinion. And when you look at some of their recent entries, like the Walking Dead games, Wolf Among Us, Game of Thrones, and of course Batman, again, I don't know if I would really qualify them as games. There is no win or lose state. There really isn't like any mechanics to these games in the sense that you're being engaged by them. You're simply just following along with a story. And that brings up other titles like Half for a Boyfriend and Analog: A Hate Story. Now with those games, I know fans will probably point out that there are end states. There are different endings for you to achieve based on what you're doing. But these are elements that it's kind of very hard to judge their kind of gameplay. And again, that takes us back to this original question of how do we define what a game is? How do we define what a good game is or a bad game? And as you know, we tried doing that a few weeks ago and got into a semi-heated topic about that. But when it comes to defining games, it's one of those terms that I think maybe we do need a second or a supplemental title. Maybe experiences. Again, would you consider something like Analog: A Hate Story or Dear Esther or Gone Home to be games in the same breath as Dark Souls? Or even something like Evolve, which I'm looking at right there, that's why I brought it up. But the problem is when we don't have any kind of standard of measurement, it makes it harder to critically examine these games, and more importantly, it makes it harder for certain games to stand out. As you know, right now the only real defining measurement of a game is its price. And again, pricing has certainly varied wildly over the last 6 years. Right now you can go on Steam and find games ranging from $1 to $30, and even indie games have had so much trouble with getting their game pricing right. I've seen fans complain when a game is $30. I've seen them complain when a game is $10. And again, when you're basically putting everything in the same group and labeling them all games, it really just muddles the market. When you're putting something like Dear Esther, which was priced I think at $24, or I'm sorry, Gone Home at $24, and you have a game like Renowned Explorers or Duskers or even Clockwork Empires, which is due out later this month, being priced around that same price, it really just pulls everyone into trouble. You have people complaining about Gone Home charging so much money, saying, well, these games are worth this amount, why do you think your game is worth that? And then those games get into trouble saying, your game's $20? I'm spending that on Gone Home. I expect, this much more out of you. And that also leads us into the topic of Kickstarters and crowdfunding and expectations. But again, this is a topic that we can easily branch off into any number of ways. But I think I do want to return to the issue of game evaluation and pricing, probably for tomorrow's critical thought. But we'll wrap up today's now. When it comes to trying to put a measurement on a game, again, it's something that we're all going to have to agree on. That includes the indie, AA, and AAA markets. And I know it's going to annoy people, especially developers who have been making a name for themselves with more of the esoteric or hard to define experiences. But ultimately, I think it is going to be a big plus to try and nail something down so that we can start defining a measurement that will make it easier for games to stand out. And more importantly, it will make it easier for experiences not to be lumped and judged along the same way as games and vice versa. But let me know what you think about this. Do you think we need a standard for games? And again, if so, what do you think should be the measurement of what is and what is not a video game? But we're going to wrap it up here. I am very surprised I made it through the last 14 minutes without my voice going out. We're entering, again, seems like we're never leaving the bad allergy season, so I'm hoping for a really good winter around here. But once again, thank you to 793 subscribers as of this recording. We are getting very close to 800. If you haven't checked it out yet, be sure to look at the Let's Break of the classic game Alone in the Dark, which was voted on by the fans. When we get to 800, we'll have another vote and see what you guys want to see. And like I said a few critical thoughts ago, when we hit 1,000, I have a mega Let's Play plan, and you'll get to decide which one you want to see. But otherwise, that's going to do it for today. Once again, I'm Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoyed today's Critical Thought. I will see you all tomorrow with more great content here, as well as on GameWisdom.com. Take care. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoy it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.